When buying a home, most people focus on location, price, and size, but layout is actually just as important but often overlooked. Especially when you walk into a new launch show flat, you will be wowed by the beautiful interior, and then you see the little ID treatment stickers being plastered everywhere. So when you collect the units, you must remember that it always comes bare, and without the ID treatment, poor layout becomes very obvious at that point in time when you are about to exit the market. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Lauren, and in this video, I will be sharing with you something that I'm passionate about, which is talking about the layout of the units and how it can impact livability and your price when you exit in future. Today, I will be going through with you a few case studies to show you how different buyers entering and exiting with different layout and different profits. So let's go. For the first case study, we will be looking at these two condos which is side by side in the West Coast area. First would be Park Rivera and the other one is Whistler Grand. So from the map, we can see that both condos are actually side by side. For this case study, I will be looking at their 4-bedder. So first, let's look at Park Rivera. This buyer actually bought a unit, entered at a price of 1220 PSF and sold at 1520 PSF with a profit of 356,000. And now let's look at Whistler Grand. The buyer actually entered at around the same price, 1240, and sold at 1733, a profit of 632,000, double. And let's take a look. And just to bring your attention back to the Park Rivera, these two buyers actually sold at around the same time. Just one sold in September 2022, the other sold in December 2022, which is just a few months apart. But look at the difference in the profit. It's actually close to double. And let's unpack why. Let's take a look at the layout comparison between Park Rivera 4-bedder and Whistler Grand 4-bedder. So first thing first, you can see for Park Rivera, the first thing that actually gets my attention is this really long corridor, which is a wasted space and which is what we actually call it like a bowling alley. As you can see, right, there isn't much you can do, and if you were to build storages over here, your walkway becomes very narrow. And this whole experience, when you open it up to your resale buyers in future, it may not be as pleasant as they have to walk through a narrow wasted space which they will be paying for. Alright, so when you reach the living area, yes, it is a landscape living, which is a good thing compared to a portrait one. Because the frontage is big, you are able to fill the space in this regular living cum dining. However, when I zoom to the kitchen area, right, you walk into the kitchen here, it becomes a very small enclosable space with just one window over here right in front of the sink. And inside this kitchen, you have a store and a WC, and this WC is actually linked to the store. So in this way, right, I find that there is poor natural light because you only have this small window over here, and there's also poor natural ventilation in this kitchen, which I feel is very important because kitchen is where you will do a lot of cooking. There will be smell, there will be oil and all that, so ventilation is very important. And especially in Singapore's climate, right, if you were to walk into a kitchen that feels very stuffy, your next buyer will be able to feel it pretty obvious. So other than that, right, when I were to study the layout, other than this area, the room size and all that are actually pretty decent. But let's look at the next block, which is Whistler Grand 4-bedroom. So when you look at the 4-bedroom in Whistler Grand at 1281, first thing you walk in here, there is a slight privacy because you will be facing a wall instead of looking straight into the house like this one in Park Rivera. But I don't think you can see much because the corridor is very long. So when you walk in here and you turn in over here, you will reach the kitchen. And for the kitchen, right, you have a dry kitchen as well as a wet kitchen. And you have windows here, you have a yard with windows over here, and your WC with window over here. So first thing, when I look at the kitchen, I feel that there is definitely better ventilation compared to Park Rivera. And of course, with this dry kitchen over here, right, and there's also a glass feature over here. If you have seen enough of my project analysis video, I actually talk a lot on this glass panel because this glass panel affects the visibility of your future buyers when they walk in, or rather yourself. When you buy a home, you also want to feel good and feel that it's spacious when you walk into the house. So with this glass panel over here, imagine you just stand here, you are able to see this whole view. Compared to this one, even when you were to stand over here, this is your visibility of the living only, whereas over here you have this. It makes a huge difference in terms of visibility as well as your kitchen aesthetics. And with this dry kitchen, right, you can actually use it within your kitchen itself, or you can also use it outside as a bar top. And when it can be integrated into your living, right, your living naturally becomes much wider. And second thing that I have realized is that their master room. So their master room, if you were to compare it to Park Rivera, it is much larger already. When you walk in here, you have this whole space to yourself because the wardrobe is actually tucked over here. I'm right to say that for master room, for the people living in the master room, they should be the main paymaster of the whole house. So the feel-good factor actually affects them when they offer for your unit. In this sense, right, it is very comfortable staying in this master bedroom. And if you realize with these little tiny touches of a walk-in wardrobe, it actually gives you a sense of superiority as well. So let's say if your buyers were to arrange 2 viewings on the same day and they were to look at these 2 layouts, which one do you think they will go for? Or rather, which one would they be willing to pay more for? I think the answer is quite obvious. And the second case study that I would like to talk about is Principal Garden versus The Crest. Same thing, they are located at Prince Charles Crescent and they are side by side. I'm not sure if you have seen The Crest before. The Crest has this architecture that it makes it look like an open blooming pineapple. That's based on my opinion, but you can go down and take a look at yourself. So one thing to note is if you want to enter into a development with iconic architecture, then you do have to take note of the layout, because most of the time your layout will be compromised because it has to suit the facade of the architecture. Alright, so let's take a look at the data first. For the Crest and Principal Garden, I will be using their 3-bedder comparison. So in the Crest 3-bedder, for this particular 3-bedder unit, they purchased it at 1696 PSF and sold at 1899 at a profit of 247 in July 2022. When they exit the market during the same period of time in 2022, we have a Principal Garden buyer who bought at 1672 and sold at 2262 PSF also in 2022, same year as the seller over here, just a difference of 2 months. One sold at with a profit of 247,000, the other sold at a whopping 730,000 profit, close to 3 times. And why is it so? Let's dive deeper. Looking at the 2 layouts comparison, at one glance, it's pretty obvious that which is a better layout. Principal Garden, we have a very regular layout, whereas the Crest, like what I've mentioned, for them to fit into the facade of the architecture of the whole building, the interior and the layout of the property has to be compromised, and that's where we are seeing all these odd edges and awkward corner over here. There is also a balcony in the master room, which can be quite a waste of space unless you have a really beautiful view over there, like a sea view or something like that. Okay, so one look you can tell I don't think I really need to go deep into the individual layout of this whole place. If same thing, you are a buyer looking at this area and then you arrange 2 viewing back to back. First you look at this, the Crest 3-bedder, and next you move on to Principal Garden 3-bedder. Which layout would you choose? And I also want to highlight and applaud Principal Garden. In this layout with only 8 square feet, right? For same thing 3-bedder, they even managed to have a private lift, which actually adds to the premium to this unit itself. And also the layout of the living is this, what we call a landscape layout, whereas in the Crest, right, you walk in here, this is what we call a portrait, more of a portrait layout since the balcony is over here, meaning to say your view would be like that, whereas for Principal Garden, your view is like this. The space difference, I think, is quite obvious already. And plus, more regular layouts, standard layout. There is no balcony in the master room that you are paying for. They use this extra space very efficiently. And then private lift, landscape living. When you walk into the kitchen, you have ventilation almost everywhere and it's very spacious as well. Everything is tucked neatly in a corner with their secondary entrance over here. So one look you can tell that Principal Garden is better, but by diving deeper and to experience it yourself when you are standing inside the unit, the difference becomes so obvious. And out of the Crest and Principal Garden, both are 3-bedder. Which layout would you choose if you are a buyer? And which will you be willing to pay more? So I guess the data have shown it. And the next one I will be talking about is Sky Habitat and Jadescape. For those of you who are familiar with Sky Habitat, it's located at Bishan, just 5 minutes walk to Junction 8 and Bishan MRT. And whereas for Jadescape, it's located near Marymount MRT. Just by looking at these 2 developments, many of you would think that Sky Habitat is more premium in in terms of location, because this is Bishan, you have a big mall, you have a main MRT line, whereas Jadescape, it is near a Marymount Circle Line with pretty much nothing around there, Shunfu Road. But how are these two projects actually performing in the resale market? Let's take a look. And this time around, we will be looking at the smaller unit comparison. So for Sky Habitat 1 Plus study, this particular unit who bought at 1,005 PSF, they sold at 1,007 with a profit of 175,000. For a one-bedder, actually is pretty decent. And of course, we also take a look at the two-bedder at 893 square feet. They bought at 1,005, 30 PSF, sold at 1,006. Profit of about 113 thereabouts for a two-bedder in Sky Habitat. And if these are the profitability of Sky Habitat, which is located near Bishan MRT, how will this Jadescape located near Marymount perform? Let's take a look. For Jadescape, we are looking at the average purchase price 1,006xx PSF, and it managed to sell above 2,000 PSF, profit of more than 400,000 for a two-bedder. Let's take a look at the layout. From what you are seeing here, we have a 1 Plus study Sky Habitat as well as a Sky Habitat 2-bedder, and on your right side, we have Jadescape 2-bedder at 775. First thing to note is the size. For Sky Habitat's 1 Plus study is at 710 square feet for a 1 Plus study, whereas in Jadescape to have two proper bedroom, it is only at 775 square feet. In this sense, the internal size is actually about the same. And of course, for Sky Habitat 2-bedroom, it is slightly bigger. But take a look at the layout. Same thing for Sky Habitat. This is also another good example of buying into an iconic development, and that usually comes with the risk of odd-shaped layout as well as awkward corners just to fit into the facade of the whole architecture. So as you can see, Sky Habitat is actually known for its balcony. They usually have bigger than normal balcony, and for their one-bedder, when you 1 Plus study, you walk in here, first thing you have an open kitchen, your master bath, and your study is like that. You have to walk in through this corridor to this little corner over here, and the balcony is in this diamond shape. Yeah, I find that it is very unique, but when you were to exit in future and your customers around there have choices, that is where the consideration will come into place. And for their two-bedder, you can see how big this balcony is. It's almost 1/3 of the living space already. When you walk in over here, you have an open kitchen, you have a living dining, and I find that this is a pretty standard, but the only difference is really the balcony. So let's take a look at Jadescape. With this kind of regular and efficient layout, right? Although the size is smaller than a Sky Habitat's two-bedder at only 775, let's see what the buyer gets. You step in, first thing you get an enclosable kitchen. Enclosable kitchen for small units is actually not very common. And not just that, it comes with a window in this kitchen as well. You have natural ventilation, you have natural lighting in your small little kitchen, and you have glass panel over here. I really have to kudos to this developer by making everything right just from the moment you step into the house. And then you have a proper dining tub over here. When you walk in, you have two proper bedrooms and a balcony. So the balcony is of a regular shape. You get it at 775 square feet. I don't see it being more inferior to a Sky Habitat 2-bedder 893. The interior size is a lot bigger, but all this space actually spread to your excessive balcony compared to a regular layout, neatly tucked kitchen, glass panel. So when you compare it to a Sky Habitat 2-bedder at 893 square feet, we can see that a lot of space is being used excessively in the unusable area, for example, the balcony. And just the kitchen itself, it also makes a huge difference, because for this is actually an open concept kitchen in Sky Habitat, whereas in Jadescape is an enclosable kitchen. If you are a buyer looking to enter into this area and you were to plan your viewing back to back, first you take a look at Sky Habitat because of its iconic development, and then next you move to a normal standard Jadescape 2-bedder regular layout. Which one would you feel more comfortable staying in, and which one would you feel more livable and willing to pay for? You should have an answer by now. A good layout isn't just about the aesthetics, it's about the functionality and the efficiency as well. So if you're looking to buy a unit, make sure the layout is part of your decision-making process. And of course, if you're looking at the market and want to have clarity of your unit selection, feel free to reach out to me at any of my platforms over here. And if you wish to have more market insights, more exclusive market insights, you can also scan this QR code to join my Telegram channel. And with that, I've come to the end of my video, and I'll see you the next time. Bye!